This is biology and winemaking. A little bit about me. My name is Jacob. I'm 22. I have my associates in enology and viticulture, and I'm looking to transfer to Cal Poly or Fresno State to get my bachelor's after my internship this summer. I got an internship at a winery called Center of Effort. In 2022, I got a $1,000 scholarship from Presskill Winery, and I got three scholarships this semester, and I'll find out my donors soon after the scholarship banquet. Biology plays a crucial role in viticulture, the cultivation of grapes for winemaking. Here are some key biological concepts in viticulture. The grapevine biology, understanding the growth and development of the grapevine, Vitis vinifera, is essential for viticulture. This includes knowledge of grapevine anatomy, physiology, and genetics, photosynthesis. Grapevines use photosynthesis to convert sunlight into energy, which is stored in the grapes. Hormone regulation, plant hormones such as auxins and cytokinins regulate grapevine growth and development. Root structure. Grapevine roots absorb water and nutrients from the soil and their structure affect grape yield and quality. The leaf structure. The grape leaves are responsible for photosynthesis and transpiration, and their shape and size impact grape yield and quality. Flower and fruit development, understanding the biology of the grape flower and its fruit development is crucial for optimal grape production. Pests and disease management, biological knowledge. Biological knowledge is essential for managing pests and diseases that affect grapevines, such as powdery mildew and botrytis. Microbiology, microorganisms like yeast and bacteria play a vital role in winemaking, and understanding their biology is crucial for fermentation and wine quality. Soil biology, soil microorganisms and nutrients impact the grapevine growth and quality. And ecology, understanding the ecological interactions between the grapevines and other plants, animals, and vineyards in the ecosystem is vital for sustainable viticulture practices. By applying biological principles, viticulturists can optimize grape yields, quality, sustainability, ultimately leading to better wines. A little bit more about viticulture. Some of the best conditions for the grapes in California are 6 to 7 hours of full sunlight. Soil grapes can grow in less fertile soil, but they'll produce smaller grapes. These smaller grapes are more suited for winemaking because they are less desirable for eating. Drainage. Grapes need good drainage. Grapes need plenty of space for their roots to grow. Temperature. California has a nearly perfect climate for grapes. We have a long growing season and plenty of sun. The growing season is from spring till fall. So currently right now, grapes in vineyards are beginning to grow. This is a picture of a vineyard. This is a vineyard in California in Napa Valley. The picture came out kind of blurry, but these are full grape clusters growing on their vines. What is enology? Enology is also known as enology, pronounced the same way. This is a science and study of wine and winemaking. Enology is a distinct field from viticulture, which is the science of grape cultivation. Enologists are experts in the science of wine and the arts and techniques for making wine. They're usually they usually work as winemakers, wine chemists, in commercial laboratories and enologic organizations. Enology is a multidisciplinary field that combines the knowledge from biology, chemistry, and microbiology and food science to understand the process involved in winemaking. If you would like to learn, mm, This is a barrel storage, a wine barrel storage cellar in a winery also from the Napa Valley. These are stored for aging purposes. Some basic concepts. Here are some basic concepts in enology. Fermentation, where the process of turning grape juice into wine, typically through the action of yeast. Winemaking, the process the process of producing wine, including fermentation, clarification, and aging. Viticulture, the cultivation of grapes, including planting, pruning, and harvesting. Enology, the study of wine and winemaking, including the science and technology of fermentation, wine production, and wine aging. The ecosystem, the community of living and non-living things that interact with each other in a particular environment, such as the vineyard. And wine laws and appellations of origin, regulations that govern the production of wine, including the types of grapes that can be used, the method of production, and labeling of the wine. This is a little graph that shows the process of winemaking from harvesting to the adding of the yeast, making sure the fermentation is full and complete to how the winemaker wants it. Pressing if necessary, it depends on the wine. And then some additions that can be made for the wine from the winemaker's choice. And then would go the clarification, making the wine clear with some fining agents like egg whites, bottling, and then the wine would be ready for selling. What is fermentation? The fermentation is the magic that turns the grape juice into wine. Um, the main course. Winemakers start with the grape must, which is simply crushed grapes or grape juice for white wines. This must is full of natural sugars, mainly glucose and fructose. The yeast are single-celled fungi that love sugar. Winemakers may produce specific strains of yeast or rely on the natural yeast present in the grape skins, which is common in red wines. The yeast get to work consuming all the sugars in the must, from sugar to alcohol, through a biological process called anaerobic fermentation, which is without oxygen. The yeast convert those sugars into two main products, ethanol, which is the alcohol, and carbon dioxide. While the alcohol is the star of the fermentation, fermentation does much more. Over 200 flavor compounds are created during this process, influencing the final wine's character, which can be very complex. Winemakers carefully control fermentation temperature. Cooler temperatures favor lighter bodied wines with fresh fruit flavors. Warmer temperatures can produce fuller bodied wines with riper fruit notes. Red wines are typically fermented at warmer temperatures than white wines. Different yeast strains have varying effects on the aroma and flavor profile. So that would be another winemaking choice, depending on what kind of wine, the style, and whatever the enologist prefers. And the vessel of choice, this type of fermentation vessel can be used, such as stainless steel, oak barrels, and concrete eggs, which are new in winemaking. These can influence the wine's character. Stages of fermentation. There is primary fermentation, which is the initial fermentation lasting 3 to 5 days. The yeast uh, consume most of the sugars and produce a significant amount of CO2. And secondary fermentation. This is a slower process where the yeast clean up after themselves, further influencing the wine's flavor and aroma. The importance of fermentation. Fermentation is the heart of winemaking. It is It not only produces the alcohol, but also shapes the wine's taste, aroma, body, and mouthfeel. By managing the fermentation process, winemakers can create a vast array of styles. Bad fermentation. Bad fermentation can happen during winemaking, turning what could have been a delicious beverage into something very unpleasant. Off odors. Instead of pleasant fruity aromas, bad fermentation can produce a vinegary smells, rotten egg scents with hydrogen sulfide that can appear, and cheesy aromas with butyric acid. Sluggish or stalled in fermentation. Healthy fermentation should show bubbling activity from CO2 release. A sluggish or stalled fermentation might indicate a weak or unhealthy yeast. Unpleasant flavors. The finished wine might taste very harsh, sour, or even off-putting. The causes of bad fermentation are could be temperature issues. The ideal range usually being about 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit for most yeast strains. Um, Too high of temperatures or too low of temperatures can stress the yeast, leading to sluggish fermentation process and unwanted aromas. Unhealthy or inactive yeast, old or improperly stored yeast, maybe not strong enough to ferment effectively. Lack of nutrients for the yeast can also lead to problems. Unwanted bacteria or wild strains of yeast can take over the fermentation, producing undesirable flavors. This is a picture of bad yeast. It is essentially molding. This is once it gets this far, there's not very much you can do to save the wine. Prevention of bad fermentation is um use good quality and fresh yeast. Choose the right yeast strain desired for the winemaking style. Ensure it's fresh and properly stored. Temperature control, maintain the temperature ideal for the yeast that's been chosen. Provide the yeast with essential nutrients such as yeast hulls, diammonium phosphate to promote healthy growth, and sanitation of all equipment. Clean and sanitize all equipment to minimize the risk of bacterial contamination. After fermentation, there is settling out. The young wine will contain leftover yeast cells, grape skin particles, and other solids. These will naturally settle out over time, but the winemaker may also use techniques like racking, transferring the wine into a new container to remove the solid sediment. Fining and filtration. Some winemakers use fining agents such as egg whites and bentonite clay to attract and clump up unwanted particles, which are then removed through filtration. This is what makes the wine clear and smooth. If you ever notice in a wine that's sold, there's no cloudiness to it. It's always clear by desire. Um, Malolactic fermentation is optional. Secondary fermentation, this is a deliberate controlled bacterial fermentation that converts some of the wine's sharper malic acids into softer lactic acids for creamier mouthfeel. Not all malolactic fermentation is not used for all wines. It's often employed in red wines and sometimes white wines to add complexity and mouthfeel. Wine is typically aged in stainless steel takes or oak barrels. This during this time, the wine continues to develop flavor and complexity. Stainless steel tanks help preserve the wine's fresh fruit characteristics. Oak barrels impart tannins, vanillin, and other toasty and smoky notes depending on the type of oak and the toasted level of the barrel. Lengths of aging. The length of aging uh, varies and depends on the wine style. Lighter bodied wines can be aged for a few months, while full body wines like red wines could be can be sat for years in oak barrels. And then they can all there can also be blends. Wines can be stored and used for blends later. And winemakers may blend wines from different grape varieties, vineyards, or vintages to achieve desired flavor profiles, or style. Final touches, the wine is bottled, corked, and labeled, and it may undergo further storage before being distributed for sale. There are, thank you.